Episode 1.
Episode 1 of what?
Right? Machine&Emotion Podcast.
Otherwise known as the M&E Podcast.
Yes.
It will probably be referred to, if it goes anywhere, as the M&E Pod.
I'm
with
with it.
A lot of people say like pod for like,
M&E Pod.
the Jerry Pod and like.
Well, this is Kate from the M&E Pod.
And this is Ryan from the M&E Pod.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well,
Listeners.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
audience. Yeah, so this is cool. This is a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've been talking about doing podcasts in our home pretty much for a long time. And speaking of in our home, we're actually in our new home.
Yeah. And right now we're in our creative studio, which we're calling Moon Labs.
Moon Labs, aka Moon Labs Inc. I don't know why I always think of like Moon Labs Inc. in my mind.
And if it's not fitting, Shadow's getting a drink of water right as we're talking about Moon Labs. So if that doesn't just cue in the inspiration.
Who is Shadow and who is Moon? Because let's just pretend everybody watching or listening has no idea who we are.
Right. So Shadow is my dog. He's a lab mix.
Black lab, chocolate lab, golden lab?
Good question. A little bit of everything. He's a mutt.
Okay.
But
it's more on the darker side.
I like to call him Moon. Moon Man, Moon Spoon.
Oh gosh! If we start going down the nicknames, this will be an hour episode. Just
but
on
Moon
nicknames.
Labs is like his play area and also our play area. So here we are.
Oh, okay, interesting. I've never even heard you refer to it as our play area, but this is definitely
Evolution at Play.
Evolution at Play, which is one of our slogans or monikers, I guess you could call it. But yeah, Machine&Emotion is our company. Our business, and we do video production and data analytics and all kinds of things that relate to that and are adjacent to it. One sec, I need to plug in the laptop because the battery is running low.
Oh.
So, where are we? What city are we in, Kate? Because we did just move.
Yeah, we did. So we'd both been living in SF for various times, but well over 7 years on my end, and I think well over 10 years on your end. And now we're down in sunny Los Angeles, and let me tell you, weather is very different. I mean, maybe it just goes to show like where we were at in San Francisco in particular, you get a little bit more fog than say like the East Bay. But we have a lot of nice sunshine down here in LA, and the lifestyle is way different. So we're enjoying having more space and areas to create.
I agree. What was interesting that I actually just thought of, I think probably the first time I thought about this is like we were living right near the beach in San Francisco, but yet we like barely ever had sun or like nice like days where you wanted to go out.
The other qualifying conditions to like want to spend time at the beach.
Right. Like we might as well lived like we might as well have lived at a beach with like blizzards and snow. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because like I mean, some days in San Francisco it just was too cold to like even want to go do anything. Like to take something to the trash. Like I remember many times we'd be like, "Oh, should we take the trash out?" Nah, it's nighttime. It's cold. You know what I mean? Because it's like when the sun went down in San Francisco, it got cold.
Well, and you have the breeze coming off the ocean, and then it's just nippy.
Right.
Nippy.
So actually living like, because I mean, we were like less than 20 blocks like from the beach, and it's like when you're that close, you really underestimate how when the waves are rocking, like that's producing a lot of wind, and air coming your way. But now, I mean, we're in Los Angeles. We won't say where. We're in a secret undisclosed location, but what's great is that we're close enough where if we want to go to the beach, it's going to be doable. And what's great is the beach is actually going to be a beach that you want to go to,
right?
Because I mean, like I just remember telling people like, hey, I live like near I'll just say it, we lived in San Francisco near Ocean Beach, and when I would tell people, they'd be like, oh, that's a shitty beach, and I would be like, what do you mean? And then it's like, once you move out of the city, like you realize, okay, I get it.
Relative to other beaches in California.
Exactly.
Relative to other beaches in San Francisco, well, there aren't too many, so it's like okay.
I think we had a little too much home team bias, not that I have any disdain or anything towards San Francisco. Great city, it did what we needed, I think, for as long as we were there.
Purpose,
and
but we are happy to be residents of Los Angeles.
Exactly. we are happy to be new Angelinos, as we hear it's called.
Angelinos.
Yeah, it's really cool to be here, and we're here for a long time and a good time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the saying, "We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time." Well, we're here for a good time and a long time. We plan to
Yeah.
be here for a long time, which is great.
Ironic timing to bring this up in the middle of March 2020 here in the
Sure.
United States with
Sure.
coronavirus being on the rise. But
So we were kind of toying around, and I think we're going to
Yeah.
call it this because why not? So episode 1 of the M&E podcast, or the M&E pod, is going to be coronavirus.
yeah,
Because that is what's going on right now. Never before in history have we really seen anything like this, because it's like we even had the H1N1, we
Yeah.
had SARS, and which wasn't that the same thing? Or
I
no,
don't know.
H1N1 was in 2009, SARS was in 2003, because I just read up on this the other day.
Right.
And both those pandemics, I should say, were like people are comparing them in articles, and I don't want to get like too political,
Yeah.
but it's like people were like, oh, well, this isn't as bad as those were. And it's like, yeah, this is really bad because it's got a high death rate, even though like low percentage of people have been infected so far.
Yeah.
And apparently it can stay on metal for 5 hours without needing any kind of like, preservation. So it's like,
Right.
think about how many surfaces have metal in the world,
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a kind of a hairy time and an interesting situation. But we actually went out yesterday, which, we're not, and anybody watching or listening at home, don't think that we're the enemy. We went out because we had to grab some groceries. We couldn't order certain things
Yeah.
through Amazon and other
Instacart
things.
stopped delivering.
Which we tried to do it in a
Yeah.
responsible way, to have,
Yeah,
a delivery
yeah.
person come out and just keep it,
Hey.
one to one.
Yeah.
So we drove. And we went to Aldi's in the LA area, which that was packed. It was just crazy.
Let's just
Yeah.
say
Why don't you take it?
we drove by it first before they opened, and there were lines like out, down and around the building, and we got spooked.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
left.
Well, and we also got some looks from people that were like, "We've been here from 4 a.m.
Yeah, I'm
Take the
like,
next
okay,
shift,
yeah. I'm like, okay, fine. So we slip our way into Rite Aid.
That's right.
Like,
That's
okay,
right.
what does Rite Aid have
right.
in this apocalypse?
Which I thought we were in
section?
GNC, because I saw the sign and I go, "Wow, GNC's changed."
Okay,
Oh man,
lay
our,
down, boys.
Our dogs
Yeah,
are knocking
they're
over
going
things
game
inside
time.
the
Hey, come on. There
Moon
you go.
Labs studio.
Yeah, they're just
so.
gonna wrestle up there.
Yeah. So if you do hear any extra noise in the background, we do apologize, but that
Yeah.
is our lovely, lovely pack of furry children.
Yeah. They're
Oh, and I have my own dog too. Since we went over Shadow, aka Moon, aka many other things that you'll learn all the nicknames throughout this M&E pod if you go on the journey with us, which we invite you to do. My dog named Charlie is a Spaniel Corgi Dachshund mix. He's got little feet. We call him a lot of different things: Char, Char,
Mini
little
Moon.
Mini Moon, yeah,
Charman Moon.
Charman Moon. Like, yeah, I mean, anytime you say any of his nicknames, he just like looks up and like he'll turn his head to the side.
But
And
like
if you,
one of his eyes is kind of wonky.
Yeah.
So it's like
Oh,
he
good
turns
point.
his head to the side, but then like one eye is like going off
That's
this
funny.
way, and you're like,
I'm probably such
Where
a
are you at,
partial.
Char?
I'm probably such a partial, loving father that like I don't think I would have even brought that up. Like everybody always brings up the wonky eye. It's like one of the
it's
first
like,
things.
It's all you see in a picture.
I try to see past it. I try to see his heart.
No, that's there too, but the
That's there
eyes,
too, buried deep
Yeah,
behind
the
all that.
eyes out there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, everything's been really, really cool in LA thus far, despite all the hype going
Yeah.
on with coronavirus. And I hate to even use the word hype because obviously, I have.
Well, I think it's
hold on.
appropriate concern.
I have sympathy.
Yeah.
I want to, before I go any further, I want to be clear that I do have sympathy for those that are suffering from it. But people that are like trying to capitalize on this thing and like cause hysteria when there doesn't, need to be as much. I'm like, come on, guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, stay home, sure, quarantine yourself. But like, some people are like, blowing it up on the internet from the certain channels that I follow and whatnot. And it's like, I know just from being kind of like a little bit of a conspiracy interested party. I won't say I'm a theorist, but like I've followed things over the years. I know that there's a fine line between like what everybody else is talking about, what's really true, and then it's somewhere in the middle typically, that it lies. So I don't know. I'm not an expert at this point. Obviously, we're kind of holed up, in our home and in our certain area. But from what I've seen as far as like cities being infected and whatnot, I'm very happy that we're in LA because at least it's not like places like Seattle that are unfortunately having a lot of cases. France, obviously, Italy, a bunch of countries have actually closed their doors. Like can't get in, can't get out, like an actual country quarantine. And I haven't followed everything completely closely with the US, but the last I heard, we have a travel ban from Europe, and there's goods being slowed or stopped from Europe too. So I mean, this is just like crazy. Like, I mean, I don't work in enough of these industries, politics, shipping, etc. You know what I mean? Like, what is it? Import, export. You know what I mean? To be like really commenting on it, but it's just like it's crazy to hear about it and to think like, wait, this is happening now. You know what I mean? And then like I heard like Tom Hanks has it, and it's like Tom Hanks, like everybody loves Tom Hanks. Like, how did he get coronavirus? But it's like it really does show, that anybody can get it. The mayor of Miami has it. 2 people that dined with President Trump have it. It's just like
allegedly.
There we go. See, and Kate will always be on allegedly duty.
Yeah,
for
that's
M&E
all I
Pod.
can do.
Yeah,
Sprinkle allegedly.
Yeah, our lawyer told us to do that.
Yeah.
Sprinkle allegedly all over the pod, and they can't get us, right? But yeah, so it's a very it's a new time, and it's an interesting time. But at the same time, we're trying not let it get us down or really affect us. Fortunately, we can both still function with most of our day-to-day life from our home, which is great. So I'm pretty excited about, everything that we have going on coming up for Machine&Emotion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think with coronavirus, it's really just a matter of time. I think all of these cities are going to experience it to a certain degree. It's just kind of a matter of when it plays out and over what time frame.
Yeah.
Is kind of my sense of just what's going on, from not really being super dialed in, but just, Googling 3 to 14 times a day, like coronavirus, Los Angeles,
and then go to news.
Yeah. Just me and everybody else. So it's like, okay, just my sense of that, given like who I am as a person, I'd say we're all gonna kind of have to go through this. It's just kind of what the tipping point is for each city. I'd say it feels like in LA we're somewhat ahead of like things, but who knows?
Right.
Given the fact that it can be in somebody's system for 14 days and that they're passing it around without symptoms, it's like it's a lot of traveling and moving around, and so
yeah. Well, one person, I forget who it was, it might have been Andrew Schultz, had said that if you really think about it, how many because of the testing and like the uncertainty of it and everything, if you think about it, a lot more people probably have it than have been confirmed. So like. I thought it was an interesting angle, at least, that if what he theorizes or hypothesizes is true, it would be kind of an interesting angle. If this were the case, that basically, since there aren't more deaths, because that's certain, you know what I mean? That's like if you die and they find out that you died from corona, okay, that's for sure. But there might be cases where people are getting it and then they're getting over it because it's not necessarily fatal. Yeah. It's 97%, non-fatal. So. Apparently it's like 3.1 to 3.6%, somewhere around there, that if you get it, it's fatal. And most of the reports have said that it's people with weaker immune systems, the elderly. So, the odds make me feel a little bit better than, some cases that it could be like, I was researching that Ebola had like a very, very high rate and like, it was infecting a lot more people. So apparently that was in the 70s. I was born in 85. So.
Yeah, well, what I will say, just from being somebody who has a career in data and analytics, is, we're not entirely sure how clean the data set is. So, these fatality rates are calculations, and deaths are a little bit more factual than, say, number of cases. Right. But that being said, like, the severity of what each case is and kind of like the factors that play into it, like that, I think is like where people need to realize that there's like more in there. So it's like when you hear that 3% and they say, okay, people with pre-existing conditions are the most at risk and older, it's like, okay. But then maybe if you break that down and say, well, what was their physical activity and smoking? And you kind of take like you take age and you take, other factors out, you start to realize that 3% starts to feel a little bit closer to home because
Sure.
it's like, oh, well, I was a commuter. So it's like I took it, it's like it could
Right.
be random. Like we
Right.
kind of get lost in like these typical buckets and groupings of things. But, it could be
Right.
what if COVID's related to the flu shot? Hate to bring that up. But
Yeah,
it's like,
no, I know
what
what you mean.
if you have COVID, if
Yeah.
you get the coronavirus, COVID-19,
Right.
and if you had the flu shot in the past year, what if that makes you a little bit more susceptible?
Right.
Hey, I don't know, but
Right.
these are things where it's like if you're digging into that 3%, you might see like, oh, wow, 97% of the 3% had the flu shot in the past 2 years. And then you might be like, oh.
So my sister actually had the flu. That's what sent her to the hospital recently. Not to go to too much personal detail, but my sister, came down with the flu, and for a few days they didn't know what it was, and then they knew it wasn't corona because it wasn't the symptoms. But they said she got the flu, and then I asked her, I was like, "Do you get the flu shot?" And she's like, "No," and I don't get it, because of that reason. That like sometimes that'll actually give you more problems because they're introducing, small amounts of these things. But it's like we're all different. I mean, I could flick a peanut shell at one person, and they flame up, and then the next person goes, "Hey, we having peanut butter?"
Right.
So it's one of those things like you can't really blanket statement everybody, but but it is interesting that you say like with like I think you mentioned mass transit or you mentioned something related to it. Remember earlier we saw a sign that said like what not to do, like what's safe, what's semi-safe, and what's really safe.
But even that, we don't know who published it.
No, of course not.
Like,
of course not. No. Exactly. And like I'm not quoting it to be like, hey, do this and do this. But I did find it interesting. Do you remember the last thing before I'd gone inside earlier? I said, wow, video chats, like those are being encouraged. It's the safe thing. I found that really cool because it's like, sure, we didn't want these circumstances like with like COVID-19, but like if it makes people more aware that like the technology's out there. I forget who I was talking to the other day about it, but I had said, hey, isn't it really cool that now you can cut out travel expenses in a lot of ways? Like if you hop on and you have that conference call between like 4 people, well, okay, that just saved maybe having to have dinner on the corporation, right? Having to cover hotel, having to cover airfare, all of which are very, very common and like just they've become just like the cost of doing business. But it's like, does it have to be?
Right.
So it's just like, again, we didn't want COVID-19 to be what it is and what it's become or
we don't even know what it is.
We don't know what it is
become yet. But I think that's the problem.
But I guess what I'm getting at is that like at least that's maybe one of the positive things that could come out of this is that as people are stuck in their homes, they realize, oh wow, I do have a webcam on my laptop, and I can call my mom and wow, we can actually sit here with each other because I can't travel to her city like I'm not supposed to, and I don't want her to go out, but maybe I can hop on and we can have some quality time together. And like, just like you and I have discovered doing this type of medium, being able to hear each other on headphones. And I'm not an originator of this theory. I heard this from Joe Rogan that, it really makes you engaged just by default, because it's like, this is all you're doing, like the headphones are loud enough and noise canceling enough where it's like, we're not worried about what's going on outside, cars going by, and planes going over,
as long as the dogs aren't wrestling.
Well, exactly. And then, I mean, even still though, we use a noise gate on both of our microphones, thanks to the lovely software in Ableton. Thank you, Ableton. But what's great about that is they would have to be loud enough. And man, I wish I could turn the camera real quick and show their butt to butt and just sleeping on the bed like some 2 hams. So yeah, I figure that's a good time to bring up. We call our family the Hamley, and like we're all a bunch of hams. We spell it like HAAMS, which is interesting. Is my last name's Hammer, and Kate had been using the word ham to call Shadow that before. So it was just
ham man.
Yeah, he's a ham man. So like it just kind of made sense, and it made me really happy to hear. Like I was like, you've been using that, and you're like, yeah, for years, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So those are our hams sleeping on the bed. And we love them a lot, Oh, we do.
Yeah, they kind of run the show around here.
I mean, yeah, pretty much, because basically when we had a smaller place before that we lived in, and it was just like, if they needed like to play and stuff, like we'd clear out stuff, and we'd like put Moon's toys around his bed, and like even though that was kind of in the way, it was like okay, and
keep in mind he had 3 beds.
He did. You're right.
He had
you're right.
At least or 2. Yeah, no.
What happened to his biggest bed recently?
I don't know. It looks like it's actually a zipper malfunction.
Is it?
I think it's a zipper malfunction that
Can you
then
contact the
he
corporation?
capitalized on.
Can you contact the manufacturer?
Probably.
Maybe
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
hey,
Let's see. I don't
we
know what they do.
we've got a star now. His name's Moon, and he's about to be on camera a lot.
Yeah.
So speaking of Moon about to be on camera a lot, we've thought, hey, some parents, what do they call it? Child actor parents. Like, they put their kids in front of the camera.
Or typical parents that just moved to LA. They're like,
Pretty
my
much,
child's ready to be an actor.
Yes. My child's different. So we're gonna start filming. We've already been filming for years, so I'm like, we're gonna start.
Drink the juice.
Yeah. Well, okay. So drink the juice. That's funny. That makes me think of Cult, which makes me think of one of the many nicknames that we have for Shadow, which is
Osho Moon. Osho Moon.
Osho Moon. So many variations of Moon will be. Wow, my cheeks are hurting. I'm laughing so hard. But Osho Moon. So Osho, of course, if you've not been living under a rock, is from.
Wild Wild Country
Wild
on
Country.
Netflix. So if you haven't watched that, definitely check it out.
Yeah. Like it's one that you'll want to binge, because it's just like, holy crap, that happened,
So we address him as Osho Moon mainly in the sense that like we like worship him and we're just like, 'cause he's so cute.
He really is.
And he's just like such a little sweetheart. So you're just like.
And we have a Patreon, which we will leave the link in the description, and I'll put it in post as we're talking about this. But if you join our Patreon, which we gladly invite you to do and appreciate, you will see a lot of behind the scenes footage of our moons playing and just how cute Shadow can be. What's great is I got a new camera recently, which you're actually watching us film this on. And thanks to Zcam, shout out to Zcam. And it allows us to film in up to 240 frames per second in 1080p, which is full HD or FHD, and then in UHD, which is 4K. It allows us to film, it allows us to film in up to 120 frames per second, which is really, or actually 160 frames per second. Sorry, let me add a little asterisk there. 120 frames per second in full 4K, which is 3840 by 2160. Okay, as far as pixels go. And then there's there's 4K 241, which is like a CinemaScope. Okay, and that's 2.4:1, which is like 2.4 to 1, as far as like the ratio goes, or as they call it, aspect ratio. What's cool about that is it makes it already looking like, like when you have like black bars on a movie, it like makes it look more cinematic. And I love cinematic stuff. So what's cool is if we shoot at 160 frames per second, getting to the long-winded point, it will already bring the black bars down. So we can not only shoot at 160 frames per second in that resolution or aspect ratio, but it will just look really cool already. So getting to
the
another
TLDR is you can see us in all shapes and sizes.
Exactly. Yeah, what she said. But
and
but
also our dogs.
Exactly. So I'm really excited about the Zcam E2. It's already been really, really great. Like we've just done a few clips just for testing, and they came out amazing.
And I'm novice, I'd say, to all of this.
You're learning. You're learning a lot.
But what I can say is being like on the data side of things, I can appreciate proxies and what that does, because it kind of gives you like the truncated version of what you need with it's like a workable like package.
Yeah.
So
well, and
that's pretty cool.
I think throughout this podcast we'll be offering a lot of education, in addition to insight. And one thing is that, I know I didn't work with proxies before, even though I've been a videographer and editor for 10 years now, and I should have used proxies before. And I was ignorant to it. I'll be the first to admit, among other things, in my life and career, like I'm like, I'm good. And then I found out later, I'm like, oh man, that's cool. And then I'm like, oh yeah, somebody told me that like 3 or 4 years ago, So shout out to everybody that tried to tell me about proxies. I won't name names, but you know who you are, because there were like 2 or 3 people that literally every time they did a project, they were like, are you using proxies left? And I'd be like, are you using proxies yet? And I'd be like, nah. So I just kept upgrading my graphics card and my PC to be able to like handle the load, so I could pretty much play it in like almost full res. But both are acceptable. It's kind of like up to a video editor how much they want to shell out. Obviously, how much patience they have. Workflow is relative, I would say. And I think that's really cool too, because when we were editing our Lake Tahoe video with the Osmo and stuff, that was cool because just to clue in the audience, we do a podcast also called extra napkins. That was our first podcast, actually.
That was live from our van.
That was live from our van. Yep.
I built out the camper van.
What camper van?
Our camper van.
What is it?
The Ford Transit Connect.
There you go.
Yeah.
2013. Just to give the audience some visuals, it's a black Ford Transit Connect 2013.
I will have to do many segments on the van.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to talk about. I did a lot of research before I ultimately did the build out. And although there wasn't any like official build to it, it was kind of like a Lego put together of various objects that like I would research and find and like measure for. So there's definitely thought behind it. So I look forward to kind of walking everybody through that, because I'm sure, given the corona times here, people who might have been thinking about a camper van or maybe like hedging towards that. And I know for us, it's definitely nice to know that like we have that, like in addition to just being able to like be at home and do this and create here. We also have everything we need to have a home and create on the road. Yeah. Which is what you can kind of get a glimpse into with extra napkins.
Definitely. Yeah. So we were doing extra napkins, which, if you want to Google it, or we'll leave a link in the description if I remember. And what was cool about extra napkins was it was basically just a lot of B-roll of us, on our vacation and road tripping with the van. Hanging out with both
I think
boys.
We just had
was
Shadow.
It just Shadow?
On that
yeah,
trip.
It was just Shadow on that trip. But anyway, getting to it, I got to see how Kate edits, and definitely a different style, but at the same time worked really well, you know. And then I was able to edit some of the scenes myself, and I did the finishing editing, just to kind of tighten everything up and do the P's and Q's, since I've been doing this for a long time. But Kate did great, and I've been really happy with that video. I've watched it a bunch of times. Like, I'll just be hanging out and I'll be like, let me watch extra napkins.
Video to it is soothing.
It's really soothing.
Yeah, because a lot of it we're just driving through like down 395 in the Eastern Sierras. It cuts in between like Lake Tahoe, and then it goes further down to where Mammoth is, and then loops around. So it's like a lot of what we have footage of is going around Lake Tahoe and then going down 395.
And Convict Lake too, right?
Yeah. For the Convict Lake. I don't know if we have Mono Lake. Yeah, we'd have parts of Mono Lake in there, I think.
Had everything. It was really cool. And it was cool too because, especially cool for me because it was my first time at any of those places, really. But like I had friends besides the proxies telling me to do that for years. I had friends telling me, you haven't gone to Tahoe? Yeah. Like, you need to go to like Tahoe like immediately, and I would just be like, because it's just like, you like most things, there's a time for it, you don't just like drop everything and go where everybody tells you to go, otherwise that'll be really expensive and time consuming.
And not really possible in today's climate.
No, what? Jeez, it is crazy.
I mean, it might be. I don't know.
No, not today.
According to the said article reference earlier, they suggested taking a hike.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, it's probably fine.
Apparently you're still free to
The problem
take a
is,
hike.
I think right now is that like, who's really the subject matter expert on this, right? So it's like the CDC, they have like a certain scope in which they dig into, and I should probably follow up on this. But, it's like, I'm sure it's kind of like managing the disease and everything and what they research and try and find out about it. But it's just kind of like, who is like, I don't know. I've been on their website and I've been on their little links that like tell you like what to do at home and this and that. But at the same time, it's not really, it's like, where's the general experts
like
in how society should function in a state like this? Because it's like what I haven't heard is like, okay, nobody's come out and said, you guys, utilities are not going to be a problem. Like, no matter what, nobody's come out and said that I've heard, right? Nobody's come out and said, hey,
it's valid.
You're good with food. Grocery stores are going to be open. And even if grocery stores have problems staffing, then we have food banks set up with, you know what I mean? But like
people won't go hungry.
Nobody's really like addressed that I've seen. And granted, I need to do more research here, but like nobody's addressed like the key infrastructure to society and say, hey, amidst all this is how we're still going to maintain these things. And so I think that would be helpful. Like if people had a baseline, like expect to have 2 to 4 weeks worth of food because we might need to go into a quarantine, and your world's going to be a lot easier if you have food.
Right.
Yep, fair. Okay, I'd rather know that now.
Well, because you remember, like, news stations would go into, like, what to do if we have a flood. You remember?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, if the water's up to your such and such, do this. Do you remember? We saw, like, the demonstrations. Why aren't they doing that with this?
Right, because they don't know, and it's like, you know, and I don't know how much food is enough food. Like,
we've been saying this for days. I mean, full disclosure, we've been like wondering, like, do we have enough food? Because I think you're always wondering, like, we don't have like a bunker full of like rations, you know. So
I'm like,
most of the reason I'm saying
and
that,
it's like, and how I even eat today is like relative to what I know, like I'll be able to get in the next week or two. So it's just
you've been
like
thinking about it,
yeah.
No, I know
so
what you
it's
mean.
like, you know, especially I tend to do like analytics and optimization for my line of work. So it's like all I can do is think about all the different things we have, like how many carrots, how many potatoes, like how many boxes.
We have a lot of potatoes, full disclosure.
We have a good amount of potatoes. But still, I'm like, can we eat the potatoes relative to how quick they could go bad?
Once the peeler
like, that's
gets
the other
here.
thing. I needed to throw everything I have like up against a list of when it expires and then look and say like, okay, when's this stuff going bad? Sure. Coordinate my meals from there. And then even from there, be like, am I going to stretch them? Like, and I can't, like, those are like questions I have. But it's
by the way, folks, I'm used to this.
It's like nobody, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, these are
There's
all
no
these are all valid
official
concerns.
bulletin,
right?
You know, like, hey, as of what we know today, we recommend you have a 40-day food supply.
But
it's
I think that's part of, you know, both the good and bad of like having free will. You know what I mean? It's like in a nation like America, like they kind of leave you to your own.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know
that's
what I mean?
fair.
Like,
but at the same time, if they're telling people don't panic, there's going to be food on the shelves.
Right.
Okay, we'll back up that statement a little bit.
But
more.
have you heard that? Have you heard people saying don't panic?
I mean, I feel like I've heard that.
No,
I feel like I read an article I thought with like, I swear it was with the LA
Well, you told me
Mayor.
Trader Joe's stocks daily. Who'd you hear that from?
My friend.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
again,
I mean, there
like,
was a line.
sure.
There was a line, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I think it all comes back down to like, I don't know if we've hit the tipping point yet.
Within
cities. So it's like, right now there's groceries, but what about maybe when more people have it?
Right.
And then suddenly those grocery workers don't want to work and this, that, and the other. And then you already said earlier the grocery stores are changing times.
Right. Well,
so,
there's a county that had 54 cases just pop up in the last day. And it's like, that's a county.
Yeah.
So like.
And who have those 54 people
hung out with in the last 2 weeks?
Right.
Exactly.
So it's like, that's where it's like, you know, it's like, I don't have nearly enough data in front of me, nor have I spent the time like digging through. Cause it's like, I don't know data just from looking at like something top line. Like I need to dig in and say, how does this interact with that? And it's like, I haven't done any of that. So this is
fair.
But it's like, even knowing what I know about data and what I've seen relative to like how other people speak of it, like, I'm just like, I'm like, we're not thinking about this rationally enough because it's also like you think about it within the lane of like, okay, I think my odds are really slim. And sure, I hope they are. But the odds that like you're not going to be impacted by somebody who is impacted by corona, now that's where you start to get slim because it's like, sure, you might be fine. Your immediate family might be fine. But what if a second cousin or what if your best friend, you know, it's like, that's where it's like people need to be more mindful and not be so like,
flippant.
Like, because it's like, you know, other people, they might, you know, not stay back enough and then they're carrying it. They're okay, but they give it to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think the other day we were talking about nervous laughter. Like, I think that's kind of what people are doing right now, like in the country, is they're almost doing like nervous laughter because I saw a tweet from a guy in January that was talking about the China quarantine. They were like, when do you see China quarantine 50 million of their people for a flu? This was in January. And everybody commented on his tweet and said, hey man, you're kind of freaking out. Why are you worrying about China? And isn't that interesting? So it's it's like 2 months later and like, it's not a China problem. It's not, it's
the not in my backyard mentality.
NIMBY is actually what that's called.
Well, here it is, folks.
Not in my backyard, NIMBY. I learned that when I was doing sales because we used to go and we would tell people like, and we would use like fear of loss or we would use sense of urgency, which are two of the four main sales tactics. The other two are Jones effect and indifference, just to, you know, continue the education of the M&E pod. But the sense of urgency and the fear of loss are really important because we used to tell people like, hey, there's going to be digging coming up. you want to be prepared and have the service before rather than try to get it afterwards, because when they're digging, they can install, the line for
Right.
you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And people would be like, nah, it's not my problem. I don't, whatever. And then sure enough, I did that sales job for a while. I remember when the construction would start in the neighborhood that we would then be canvassing in, and I would go to the person's door and they would go, can you blah, blah, blah. And I would go, well, if you would have,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, now it's in my backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't even realize, like, even if something's like we had construction near our old apartment in San Francisco for a long time. And it's like, until you really have it up around you, like you might see like people even tweeting online, God, that's construction. You almost like laugh a little bit, and like the nervous laughter, because it's like, it's not in your backyard. It's not your issue yet, you know? But this thing has really crept up like to everybody. I mean, it's in every nation. Like, you have to really be like under a rock right now to be like, what's coronavirus?
Right.
So
yeah,
it's
Welcome
interesting.
To 2020.
Welcome to 2020, year of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll probably be what they label it as, just because, think about it, like that. I would say January is like when it rolled in, because November apparently was the first case. I just saw a news story yesterday that like November 17th apparently, or something like that, was like the first case. A man diagnosed with it, and they tested it and they found the actual coronavirus, COVID-19. Because it's like a lot of people, they're like, I don't believe this thing exists. It's like, no, it's a virus. Like, they found it, they extracted it, they put it under a petri dish.
Right.
Like, you can see it. You know what I mean? It's like moving around. It's living. So. And remember earlier I said in the pod that it lives for like 5 hours on metal. When I heard that, I was like, I'm not touching metal for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's like bullshit.
Right.
Like there's metal everywhere. And then yesterday, I don't think we had touched on this, but when we went to Aldi, just to let everybody know that we did it right. And because we don't know if we have it or not.
We waited till the lines were died down.
Until the lines were died down, just to continue with earlier. So we took the angry looks from people as, okay, we'll come back later. So we hit Rite Aid, we grabbed some stuff from there, and then I'm glad we're finishing the story. And then we went to Aldi and we geared up. We geared up because I've had N100 masks for a while, and because back from the California wildfires was actually when I grabbed them. And I'm glad I have them, because apparently they are sold out like everywhere in the nation. And I might have to wait a few months to release this episode just so people don't break down the door and get our mask. I'm kidding, but
they're used.
right, exactly. Yeah, they're used. I coughed on them. I don't know if I have it.
Right.
But so we walked in and immediately got looks. Because we were like, besides maybe one other person that was wearing like one of those like
a
tied to your ear,
yeah.
like I'm visiting somebody in the hospital type mask. But like we have like it's heavy duty. It's a respirator, and I mean it's not like a gas mask, but it's somewhere between a gas mask and the little surgical mask. But we had that, and then we also had gloves on. We had the latex gloves because, full disclosure, we had moved, so they were just still in our van. So we were like,
the gloves happen to be in our van.
But we definitely,
let me tell you, after you're wearing gloves, you do realize how much you touch.
Oh my gosh.
So
I touched everything.
Yeah. I
touched everything.
Yeah.
And I was just like, these
gloves
are so
dirty. And I didn't have a card at first.
Yeah.
Like everything's like on me.
I walked in. Okay. This was funny. I walked into Aldi and she goes, Ryan, behind the mask.
Yeah.
So I hear, run, and I look up and there's this bioweapons looking chick, that happens to be my partner. I'm like, oh, hey, Kate. She's got this, like, I'm not even joking. It's about, like, I have long arms too. She had to be stretching out her wingspan to carry this box.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much longer you could have held that. I think I came in at like critical point. You were like,
because I had just found the apples. So I'm like, this is going to get heavier.
Oh, wow. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because we had apples and then we had a large bag of potatoes. And luckily, this really nice woman, she gave us her cart.
Yeah.
While we were
that wasn't till the
end. I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
also,
that's the other thing. I'm like, I think I would have shopped differently if I had a cart from the get-go.
You had said that and I fully agree. What else happened at the end that everybody realized?
Oh, yeah. The two lanes like merge into one checkout. So then everybody who's been like salty in line like gets to the end.
And we were the only two lines that did that merge. So this was like
every
one and
other
two.
line was moving quicker except ours, which exactly. Whatever.
And then we even heard people like whispering to the other people coming in, like, you want to make sure that you get in 1 and 2, don't get in 3 and 4 like we did, and it's like, cool.
Right.
But anyway, like
We got
you,
groceries.
well, like you
so
can
I
see,
feel
we're both
thankful.
smiling. We're not
Yeah.
complaining, despite
Yeah.
how it sounds. I mean, we've been saying over and
We
over
were
again.
probably the scary
Yeah.
people to everybody
Well, I was
else.
thinking that. I was like, how many people
everybody's
think we
damn,
have it?
Yeah, everybody's like, wow, they're chill. Or everybody's like relatively chill, just like this is busy and there are other things. And then here we
Right.
come.
Right. Well, I'm thankful though. I mean, not that LA would be immune to this, but like when I saw a video yesterday of like apparently somebody like stabbed somebody with a wine bottle over a box of water, and I'm just like, thankfully that didn't happen like at all. But at the same time, it's like I didn't see a security guard around. It's like
everybody was relaxed there. I will say,
and that's what I'm getting at is that I'm very thankful that like pretty much the disposition that I noticed of people were like, I need to find some stuff, not like get out of my way. You know what I mean? Like it was more like, where's this at?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. You know what I mean? Like I heard excuse me's, because it's like, I think, again, I don't know how long this thing's going to go on for. Like you said, there's nobody real experts. But I did want to bring up, before I forget, that the other day Rogan had an infectious disease expert. So if people do watch the Rogan podcast,
we should link to that
definitely,
one.
we'll leave a link in the description to that one too, because it was about an hour and a half, and that's all you really needed, because you heard from this guy some real, probably hard truths that a lot of people didn't want to hear. But one thing that he did say is that this thing is just getting started.
Yep.
So I'm going to listen to that, and I'm going to prepare my mind for buckling down and probably not leaving for a while.
I should see if I bet there's probably like a live data set. I wonder if there's one I could get access to that updates, and then I could bring my own visualizations to the table. Yeah. Might be cool.
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
I'll look into it and see, because that'd be fun.
I think that's it. Well, if you can contribute, you never know, because you're qualified to, obviously. Like, you could throw it together, all kinds of things that I don't know about.
Yeah.
No, but
I know. Yeah. But I just want to disclaim, I'm not a doctor. I don't work at the CDC. I just work with data for a living.
I mean,
but
you
hey,
can crunch data.
Yeah, not that. That's what I'm saying.
Just want to say, just like when we're talking about a baseball
we're
player.
Not financial advisors. We're not doctors.
I know. No. I'm not saying you can steal a base, but if you can hit a home run, you can hit a home run, because it's obvious when you can do it, and you've hit some home runs with data.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm giving credit where credit's due. I mean, I am in business with you, after all, right? I have one business partner, and she happens to be really good at a lot of stuff. But anyway, before this becomes a kissing Kate's butt fest, how do you feel about?
Feel good.
I feel good about this
episode
first
one.
M&E episode 1, M&E Pod episode 1.
Welcome.
And I feel like before we press our luck with the boys, since they've been really, really good.
They chilled out finally.
They chilled out. So just to let everybody know, we are going to go inside and give them some. Or no, actually, we have some treats over here. So we're going to give them some treats for being good boys. And please join our Patreon. We will leave the link in the description. And
let us know what you're looking forward to hearing about next. I mean,
we want feedback.
We could talk about vans. We could there's a lot of different things. Ryan's musician that we didn't even talk about music. So there's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
A lot that's going to unfold, and let us know.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that, we really just wanted to start this thing because we know that we have a lot to offer. And like, that's not like tooting our own horn. That's just like saying like, we're involved in a lot. We have a lot of interest.
A lot of life experience.
Yeah, we're passionate. We have a lot of life experience. And I think the biggest thing that technology has afforded people is a glimpse into other people's lives. And I think that's one of the biggest things that this pod is intended to do, and why we started it, is that, we're not just sitting here to hear ourselves talk. I mean, it's fun, but at the same time, we want to deliver entertainment, insight, education, perspective, all kinds of things. And we really look forward to bringing that all to our audience. So again, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys watching and listening to M&E Podcast, M&E Pod episode 1. And we will see you guys soon. Thanks. Take care and stay safe.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Stay sane.
Stay sane. Exactly. All right, cool. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.